I want to, first of all, just say welcome to everyone. I'm so glad we got a great turnout. We have 25 people. I'm excited. This is the first series that one of many to come, especially around emergency preparedness. But we're going to do some other things. So I'm super excited that you guys are engaged. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to hand it over to Danielle so she can do her introduction and get into the actual subject matter of today. Danielle?
All right. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. My name is Danielle Drumgool. I work at the Office of Unified Communications. I've been here for about, I think, the better part of 6 years, 6 or 7 years. I serve as the communication specialist at the agency. So, part of what my team does is public education, community outreach. We also do social media, graphics, flyers, any kind of collateral and communication that comes out of our agency, our team handles. So I'm here just to talk to you guys a little bit today about emergency preparedness, about what our agency does and our role in kind of the public safety ecosystem, so to speak, of the district, and then just talk a little bit about some resources and services that we have at our agency, and then kind of spreading into talking about some of the resources and services at some of our partner agencies as well, and how we all kind of work together to keep everybody safe. So I'm going to go ahead and oh, it looks like I need permission to share my screen. So if the host could grant me permission to share my screen, and then we can start the presentation. Before that, while we wait for that to kind of come to, I just wanted to give a little background about our agency. Our agency is going to be 20 years old. This fall, I'll say, I believe October 1 is our 20th birthday. So we're a relatively new agency, and our agency was created after the mayor at the time kind of saw a need for a resurgence of public safety communications and how things were going in DC. And so in about 2004, previously dispatching was taken care of between the police department and the fire department. Our agency was created in 2004, and we've been here ever since. And we are kind of the communications lifeline for the district. We house all emergency and non-emergency services. So any kind of call, any communication that needs to be handled between government services typically starts with us. And we don't take that lightly. It is a huge responsibility of our agency, and we're very, very excited to just do the work. It's tiring work, it is stressful work, but it is definitely rewarding work. And any dispatcher, call taker, 311 representative here at our agency will tell you the same thing, that they are just honored and so happy to come here every day and do that work. So without further ado, I'm going to try to see if I can get to my screen. It looks like I can only share my entire screen, so I'm going to try to see if I can fix that. All right, we're going to go to the presentation. Can everyone see the entire thing before I go ahead and start? Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, Office of Unified Communications, 911 and 311. The first thing I want to talk about, as we kind of talked about our agency and our responsibilities, is the importance of making the right call. So as I mentioned, our team is really responsible for public education and kind of explaining and laying plain for residents of all ages. We talk to little kids as young as 3, and we talk to seniors and populations like yourself to make sure that everybody understands who to call when you need to call and get to emergency or non-emergency services. So for 911, crimes in progress, medical emergencies, and fire, smoke, or smell of gas are what we try to encourage people to call 911 for. Those are your emergencies, your priority ones, those kinds of things. For 311, we've kind of changed our call tree a little bit. And so for 311, you're going to call 311 for all of your police non-emergencies. So that's going to be your city services and information, and police non-emergencies include noise complaints, unoccupied vehicle related incidents, vandalism, property damage, and things like that. And then 311 is also still going to house all your city services and information. So anything from bulk trash collection to mist trash, stop lights are down, stop signs are down, stop lights aren't working, things of that nature. potholes, all of that kind of stuff. So 311 kind of remains city services and information, and then also has wrapped in kind of those police non-emergencies. So for police non-emergencies, you call 311 and you press option 1. So as I move forward, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about 311 first, and then we'll move into kind of more emergency services. So 311 provides a one-stop shop service experience for constituents, residents, and visitors searching for government services and information. 311, as the designated number for all of those services, has only been around since about 2008. Previously, before that, if people remember, it used to be referred to as the Mayor Citywide Call Center. People will call that 7-digit if you're in the city, 10-digit number if you're not in the city, and get all of their information. And 311 has just continued to grow since that first kind of iteration. And to date, we support about 17 district agencies. I think that portfolio has expanded, to be completely honest, since the last time I updated this presentation. And we take upwards of 130 service requests. So we partner with partners like Department of Transportation, Department of Public Works. As you guys know, DC is not a state. So DMV typically is a state function, but because DC is not a state, we take DMV calls, ticketing and non-ticketing calls for the district. Department of General Services, we've continued to build on the type of services we support them with. We do splash parks, dog parks, playground maintenance, grass maintenance, and mowing and things like that on those sites, and then so on and so forth. Department of Energy and Environment is a huge partner of ours, and we're happy to just continue to grow and make sure that we don't want residents and visitors calling a million different places to get a million different pieces of information, right? We try to make it as easy as possible. And so we really promote 311 as your one-stop shop. If you have any questions about anything in the city, call 311. And if they don't take a request for that specific service, they will absolutely connect you to the service and agency that you need. But 9 times out of 10, we really do try to make sure that we're touching every kind of different agency and every kind of service in the district. So we might have something that is related to that might help, or we might be able to point you in the direction of someone that could further assist you. So that's kind of 311's deal. And so as we continue to grow as an agency, we really try to make sure that we have all of the different ways that you can reach 311, because what we've found is that people kind of have different ways that they like to interact with their systems. People like to call. We will never get rid of calling. People love to call. We're happy to have people call on the phone. You can text 311. You can have the 311 app, which is super, super useful. I use it myself. That's kind of how I prefer to make my service requests. We also have an online portal where you can go. It's 311.dc.gov, and you can go onto the online portal and submit service requests. And you can also tweet. So X or Twitter or wherever it's referred to. And we found a lot of our younger residents like to tweet, or a lot of our ANC commissioners actually like to tweet as well. So we have that method as well. And our customer service representatives, as we refer to them on the 311 side, are trained to take calls for all of these different channels and mediums. So one is not more preferred than the other. One is not faster than the other. One obviously will maybe get you some different information that you might need. If you call 311, you can kind of have those longer conversations. And, I'm not quite sure what I need, but I know that, I need this and this. And in the past, I've used this, and I've talked to DPW and they don't know, and DDOT and they don't know. So if you need to have a longer conversation, if you're unsure, you can call 311. And if you're on the portal, you can actually do live chat, which if you go onto 311.dc.gov and you go to start submitting your request, you say, you know what, I'm not really quite sure what I need. You can either do a keyword search at the top. If you just type in tree or trash, it'll kind of start to populate some options. And if you're still not sure, in the bottom right-hand corner is a green little chat button. You can click on the live chat button and you can talk to a representative right then and there, and they can kind of help you out with some of that information. As I talked about with police non-emergencies being under the 311 umbrella, this is kind of just laying out some of the things we already talked about. Any unoccupied vehicle related incident, any crime that's not in progress. Crime are things that have happened in the past where there's no injury and the suspect is not on the scene. Noise complaints, vandalism, destruction, and property damage. These are the things that we really want to have people call 311 for, to report as police non-emergency. So we just continue to educate the public on that, and that is available as a service. I don't want to discourage people from calling 911. If you have an emergency, a true emergency, please do call 911. If you are unsure, if you call 911 and you say, I don't know if this is a police non-emergency or not, they will triage your call appropriately. appropriately. They're not going to say hang up and call 311, and we recognize that this is new. People are typically used to just calling 911 and talking to the call taker and getting their information. We do want to make sure that we're reserving those life-saving resources for people that have emergencies that are, your shooting, stabbings, heart attacks, strokes, things of that nature, and kind of handling the police non-emergencies in another call queue, as we refer to it as here. But we understand a change in behavior takes time, and teaching people to kind of utilize their resources and city services a little bit differently comes with a learning curve. So we encourage people to call 311, press 1 for non-emergencies. If you call 911, the call taker will still be able to walk you through what you need to get the help that you need. So traveling back to kind of making the right call, we'll jump over to the 911 side of things and kind of the bulk of the presentation. So the first thing I like to start with when I talk to communities, constituents from, like I said before, from smaller children up into district seniors, is knowing your location. That is the most important part of your 911 call. Your location and what we've tried to do on our side to kind of ease the need for, let's say, visitors specifically that come here and don't exactly know where they are. They don't understand that there's 4 quadrants in the city, and that there might be a 7th Street that is, or, Rhode Island Avenue that's in Northeast and Northwest and things of that nature. We have really tried to work with our partners from, our cell phone carrier services like Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T, as well as the FCC on up. The Federal Communications Commission, and try to say, hey, how can we help people and help the 911 industry? Because it's not just us, it's across the nation. How do we help people to kind of, how do we upgrade our technology on our end to make sure that we're getting the right address each and every time? And we're getting close and we're getting there. And it's an effort that, like I said, it comes from, Apple and Google to the cell phone carriers to FCC to 911 call centers, and all of us kind of investing in that technology and working together. So it's a slow but steady process, but still to this day, we really want to make sure that we're not taking any gambles on anybody's locations if you're having an emergency. So we're going to verify that location, and we just try to educate people on knowing where you are. When we talk to our younger callers, we tell them, if you don't know your address, start to practice. If you can get outside safely, look at those street signs, look at that, house number, door number, what apartment number do you live in, what floor do you live on, things like that. And the call takers are very well trained. They will take you through that as you progress through the call, depending on what's going on. But we really try to have people, before you get on the phone, before you call, make sure you know your location. And there's things that we can do, like I said, that we continue to work with to continue to upgrade to technology on our end. But we're not Uber. Unfortunately, we're not to the point where, that pin drops and it's exactly where you are. What we've gotten to is about, I think, a 2-house radius. We've gotten right in there. But like I said, for apartment buildings, you can be on the 2nd, 3rd floor of an apartment building. So we're still going to ask you those questions. But it does not delay service. Once you give us a location and we have that location, we typically, depending on what the emergency is, has already sent that off for dispatch while we continue to ask those different questions, excuse me. We are also continuing to make sure, kind of in the vein of 311, that we're meeting our 911 callers where they are. So one of the things that we launched a few years ago was text to 911.
I'm doing pretty good.
Text to 911 is kind of the first step towards kind of advancing that technology. That was something that we did years prior. So if you need to text 911, if it's unsafe to talk, if it's we have members of the deaf and hard of hearing community that we work with here in the district.
Okay.
You are unable to call for any reason, medical or otherwise, you can text 911. There is no other way to do it other than just putting 911 into your to field. And then just starting with your initial contact. The only thing that we advise people to do is just to be brief, to just say, I need help, this is my location, and things like that. And then from there, the call taker will go back and forth with you to try to figure out what is needed. And they understand typically that if people are texting 911, it's a different type of emergency. If you're unable to make a call for service, then you need a different type of help. And so they're going to be making sure that they're in that chat and interacting in that session. There's no delay. There's no, if you call, you get help faster than if you text. The systems that operate both our text and our call systems kind of are married to one another. So they operate the exact same way. A call and text both trigger the same response in our system. So I want people to just feel empowered to access the system any way that they need to. Like I said, for our deaf and hard of hearing community, typically that is how they interact with 911 services, as well as people, where they're in a situation, unfortunately, where it's maybe a domestic violence situation, it's not particularly safe to call. They can definitely interact with emergency services this way. So with Smart 911, Smart 911 is a service that we have contracted here in the district. We've had it since about 2012. And when we talk about emergency preparedness and we talk about kind of the ways in which we can give first responders some information maybe before an emergency occurs, this is kind of the tool that our agency specifically really tries to promote and utilize throughout the district. So Smart 911 is essentially a safety profile. You can provide call takers and first responders with critical information that you want them to know in any kind of emergency. So when you call 911 from the phone number that is registered with your safety profile, your profile that you've created shows up on the screen of the 911 call taker. They can view anything that you've included in your profile, from your address, medical information, preferred medical providers, emergency contacts, vehicles, pets, anything, entry information. If you have history of stroke, if you have history of any kind of medical conditions, all that information is available to our call takers. We've had a couple of different populations and interested populations that have really taken to this. We've worked closely with the Office of Disability Rights, and we've had parents call because their children have 24-hour around the clock care that's needed. And I remember I talked to a mother not that long ago where she wanted to create a profile for her son because he had, an oxygen tank in the house, and he stayed on the first floor of the building, and she wanted them to know that when they came in, and also wanted them to know that he has to be kept kind of at a 90-degree angle, and these are the medications that he uses and things like that. So I was able to walk with her through creating her safety profile and register her phone number with her over the phone, and make it so that when she calls 911, all that information that she wants to include was available to the call takers. And anything that's available to our call takers is available to dispatch and emergency responders as well. We share kind of a system. It's called our computer-aided dispatch system. So there's kind of duplicate CAD reports, as we refer to them as, for our call takers, dispatchers, and then field units and field responders. So there's no loss of information. So anything our call takers get is what gets to the screens that's kind of in those ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars. So we make sure that any information that we get from you guys is what goes out. So there's no kind of loss of that kind of information, because it can turn into a large game of telephone. You're calling 911, you're talking to the call taker sending it to be dispatch is sending it out to the field units. But we've tried to really create sophisticated systems so that there's a seamless transfer of information. So what can you include in your Smart 911 profile? So we'll go over that a little bit. I spoke briefly about some of the things. If you live in a home with multiple people, you can enter all residents of your household onto one profile. You can include your home or work address, and you can include any and all numbers that you would use to call 911. And I emphasize that, and I always encourage people, if you're going to use your cell phone to call 911, that's fine. But if you have a home phone, and in the event that you might use that home phone to call 911, I really, really encourage people to include all of those phone numbers. You can add your emergency contacts and things of that nature, if any pets live with you, and things like that. And when you go into kind of these, it's a little bit small, I acknowledge that, so you really can't see the full screen. But if you go into these little kind of hyperlinks under each section, so you have your people and household section at the top, and it says edit your basic info, edit your household info, medical info, things of that nature. If you go in, it opens up to a huge list of information that you can include. And you can include as much or as little as you'd like. We really encourage people to make it your own. This is all cloud-based, so our call takers do not have readily access to this system, and it's not something that is just used in the district, it's used across the nation. So it's not just something that's used here in DC, it is used across the nation, and we see different counties adopting it each and every day, and we welcome them into the Smart 911 family, and it's been a huge resource for us. And I remember seeing a story and coverage of the success of the program not that long ago with a gentleman who called, and there was a fire in his home, and he was suffering from smoke inhalation, so he really couldn't speak. And so he didn't really have a medical issue where he couldn't speak normally, but in that instance, because of that specific type of emergency, he really couldn't talk. Facebook. And he had a profile, and with his profile, his address was linked, and so they were able to really work with him to get help sent to that address. And based on the Smart 911 profile that they had and the location determining technology that was coming up on their map, they saw that that address was the same, so they were able to send him out help. So it's a great tool, and we really promote it here in the district. We're proud to have it. We really work closely with DC Fire and EMS, and they go out and promote the service for us, and as well as DC Homeland Security, which I think you guys will have the opportunity to hear from as well. We work with them to kind of identify some vulnerable populations that might benefit from a service like this, and we go out into the community and we just encourage people to sign up. We've also hosted registration events where we've come out with laptops and resources and written sheets, and we've had people create profiles and register right there on the spot. If anyone's interested in that, I would be happy to. My team would be happy to come out and assist. If we can do it or need to do it in a virtual forum, I'd be happy to do that as well. We just want to make sure that these resources and services are available and that people know about them and know how impactful it can be when they're needed, because no one plans to call 911. You know what I mean? No one plans to have an emergency, but what we're trying to do on our end as public safety entities and in the district, we try to make sure that people have what they need. So this is the closest that people can get for planning for that emergency situation. And obviously when you guys talk to Homeland Security and DC Fire and EMS, they'll talk about packing your go pack and being ready for an emergency, because things could happen at any moment. Those are the ways that you can plan and be prepared for an emergency, but calling 911 is a little bit different. So this is kind of how we help people to be planning and thinking about some things that might be helpful to first responders before an emergency occurs. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a look at what happens on your end, the user end, and then on the 911 caller end. Because like I said, when you open up those different hyperlinks and those different blue links, there's a lot of information that's there. And so people always say, well, this is a lot of overwhelming information. How are they drilling it down to the 911 call taker? Are they having to click through these things like I am? And so no, what Smart 911 has done and built into kind of our suite, I guess I'll refer to it as, of emergency tools, is they've kind of done like a quick little dialog box that comes up, and there's a few tabs, but all of the information that's listed kind of on the front is what our call takers will see. So if you can see, I'm sorry, it's a little bit difficult, the name, gender, age, primary language, does she have an advanced directive, I call her height, weight, gender, all of those things are readily available right there on the screen. And so we really try to make sure that it is available to our call takers and that they don't have to click through and do a whole lot of research, because in an emergency, every second counts and every moment matters. So we try to make sure that that information is readily available. So there's no worry about that, about them, overwhelming the system. If you include a ton of information, they'll get it all. And so what I do want to say before I move forward, though, is we've had a couple of people ask me, okay, well then that means they're not going to ask me any of those questions. That is not what that means. Depending on what's going on and depending on the type of emergency that you're calling for, our system we have to go through certain questions, because Smart 911 is not going to ask you in the event of that emergency if weapons are present when you're having an emergency, right? If there's an additional exit or entrance to the building if you're trying to evacuate for a fire. So this is super, super useful. And it's something that they utilize and kind of lean on in the event that they can't kind of interface or talk to that person directly. But if we have you on the phone, you are our greatest resource. They're still going to go through those questions. They're still going to ask you, like I said before, asking those additional pre-arrival questions is not going to delay response. Once we get that location and figure out what's going on, we're going to send an assignment, whether it's fire and EMS, whether it's the police, whether it's a joint arrival or we need both of those entities. We will send who we need to send, but we need to get a better idea of what's going on, because scene safety is of the utmost importance for the caller. It is of the utmost importance for our first responders. We like to know what we're sending them into, and we like to make sure that you are as safe as possible until they get there. And then once they get there and kind of hand it off, our chain of custody kind of ends and we go on to, the next call and the next call. So I will say this is a great tool. It's very useful, and it is something that kind of helps to bridge the gap if you can't talk to someone that's on the phone. But when you're on the phone, even if you have that profile, they're going to talk to you because you are their greatest resource. So one of the other things that I will talk about before we move forward and kind of open up for any kind of questions or concerns or anything about 311 or 911 or emergency preparedness in general as it relates to our agency is our feedback form. We created this feedback form last year, and we've had it for a little while. It is a form that we share with constituents, residents, visitors, and make sure that people have an avenue to let us know what's working well, let us know what's not, right? So we have a vast and huge portfolio for 311. But, you know, there are some ways in which we can improve on our side, on the service agency side. So we welcome feedback. We welcome those suggestions. For example, someone submitted something the other day and said that when a tree is down, there's no way to select on the different areas of where it is to say bike lane. So that's something small, right? That's something that, you know, maybe there wasn't a bike lane that was made there when the specific service request was created. Now there is. And so we need to make adjustments. Things like that are super helpful for us, super helpful for the servicing agencies to know how to continue to build on those services and things like that. We've had people say, hey, you guys should have, open houses and things like that. We welcome that feedback. We try to implement those things into our programming and services. If you have a complaint, if you called and a call didn't go right, if you felt like, you didn't get the customer service that you would have liked on the 311 side, or there was any kind of issue on the 911 side, please let us know. We review these on our communications team. Our deputy director and other entities investigate every single thing that comes through here. There's nothing that falls through the cracks, and we want to make sure that we are here to serve our community well. That's the only thing that we're here to do. We are in service of the district, and so we want to make sure that we are hitting the mark each and every time. And if there's an event in which we miss the mark, we want to know, so we make sure that doesn't happen again. So our feedback form is open. It is on our website. It is ouc.dc.gov /page/feedback. If that's too much, if you just get to ouc.dc.gov, it is along the top. It's a feedback tab. You can click it and you can submit any of your feedback. And so with that, I will go ahead and close this down. I'll stop sharing my screen and we can kind of go through any questions or anything that anybody might have. And thank you for your time and for listening. I know I talk a lot, but I'll stop. I want to see we have the chat open as well. If there are things that I have not missed, I can go through here. So I'll do that first. And then if anybody has anything additional to go through, we can definitely go through that. So many of us call and live on the northern tip. When we call through and when we get Montgomery County, is there still a phone number that goes directly to the system? Yes, there is a 7-digit phone number for 311. I want to make sure I have it correct so I don't tell you any misinformation. I will get that right now. We deal with that all day long, border calls for 911 and 311. It is something that is not unique to us. It's not unique to the district. It's happening on the Maryland side, happening on the Virginia side. It's something that we work with the FCC with. I think every quarter, every month, we do an audit of the calls that hit along the border. And we say, 100 calls that were meant for DC hit Montgomery County, 100 calls that were meant for PG County hit DC. We audit those calls, we send that information back, and we try to make sure that those towers are feeding the calls the right way. If whoever needs this information, I will go ahead and write it down. Oh, OSHA already got it. My colleague is on for us as well. 737-4404. So if you didn't see that in the chat and you had kind of the same question and you needed the same information, the number is 202-737-4404.
Is there a similar number for 911?
No. For 911, what happens with 911 is that as soon as you start to give that location information, we understand, oh, wait, no, you don't have a quadrant. You're saying Maryland. Let me transfer you over. What 911 has is quick transfer buttons on the call taker screen. So as soon as you get that location information, they're transferring it over, and all of that dynamic information that you've given them. Let's say you said, you already said that there's a shooting. They're getting that information. Are people shot? Yes, there's weapons involved. And as soon as you get that location and we realize it's PG County, we say, oh, let me get you over to PG County. Let me get them on the line. We'll get them on the line and say, hey, we have a transfer from DC, and then they triage from the rest of the way. So we don't want to bog down people with trying to remember, especially, when you're having an emergency, you're not going to try to dig for that 10-digit number. You know what I mean? So we really want to say, just call 911 and we will take it from there. Smart 911 is available on the Google Play Store. That's another question that we have. Let's say I'm in Toledo, Ohio. They have Smart 911. I may not know where you are, but with the 911 operator in Toledo, have my medical profile. Any county that has Smart 911, the information will come up. If they have Smart 911 in their county, it will come up. So if you create your profile in DC, and you call and you go to another county that has Smart 911, it'll pop up on their screen. They have availability for your profile. So if you have, let's say, a second address, or your mother, parent, someone else has an address that is somewhere else, you add it to your profile, they'll have access to that as well. We talked about direct dial 10-digit for instead of 911. You can definitely do the 7-digit for 311 services, which we provided. Information on the number of calls misdirected to Maryland and DC. And do we still have tours? So, yes, we still have tours. We also host open houses relatively frequently. I don't know when the next one will be, but we've had them. We also have like virtual town halls with 311, our chief of operations, and our director from time to time. But we welcome tours. We can kind of coordinate that and see what that looks like. The information on the calls that are misdirected to Maryland and DC, that goes directly to the FCC, so they have access to that, and then directors and chiefs kind of in the area. So we don't even, like, our communications team doesn't have access to that number of calls, but the FCC definitely does. And I'm not sure how many there are, but I will say that this is something that all PSAPs, or public safety answering points is what they're referred to, 911 call centers are referred to rather, have this issue. And it's just something that they're continuing to work through. It's something that they're really trying to make sure that they are remedying, but we're making sure that we're getting down to those transfers are quick, there's no delay, and all the information that you've given us is transferred over, if you've given us any information. Answer the 2 questions above. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to skip anything. How do we get out emergency information into 911? And if we faxed our form to the city, will 911 have access to it? So the only information that 911 will have access to is the information that you give us directly when you call. We don't have any access to any other forms or district government services and things like that have been provided to other government agencies. And the way that you get your information to 911 is to call directly, and then during the emergency, we will get that information from you. If you want to register for Smart 911, you just go to smart911.com and you can create your profile. And I'll put that link in down here. And you guys can definitely go there. I encourage you to go and create a profile. It's super, super easy. It's very intuitive. It's very user friendly. But if you have any questions, if you need anything, I will enter my information as well. And I will.
Excuse me, I was told that if I faxed my MOST form, do you know what that is?
No, ma'am, I'm not familiar with that.
All right, that's the form that you fill out about whether you want to be resuscitated or various medical emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
I was told that if I faxed my MOST form to the city, that you guys, 911, would have it. And, if you had to come to my house for an emergency. Are
Mm-hmm.
you saying that's not true? You will not have access to that information?
So when they told you to fax it to the city, did they tell you which specific agency that you need to send it to?
Let me just, I'm looking at the form here.
Mm-hmm.
202-671-0707. It's DC Health.
Yes. So DC Health is one of the agencies that we work with on the 311 side of things, but we don't have any kind of partnership with them on the 911 side. If you send it to DC Health will work with DC Fire and EMS and make sure that they have that information, because they're going to be the ones that are coming to your home in any given emergency situation, and they're going to be the ones that need to have that information.
So you're saying it will work?
Yes, ma'am. If you send it to DC
my
Health,
MOST form, it will get to the emergency responders.
yeah, so we won't have access to that, but DC Health will, and they will update it wherever it is relevant and necessary to be updated, and make sure that DC Fire and EMS has access to that information, because they're going to be the ones that are going to make that call. The 911 call takers and dispatchers aren't going to be the ones to kind of make that call, if that makes sense. But if whoever is calling, if you are not the one that's calling and someone is calling on your behalf and they let us know, we will update it in the notes and make sure that they have it. But DC Health will make sure that that information gets to the appropriate parties.
I'm having trouble understanding what you're saying.
Okay.
On the one hand, I hear you saying, yes, DC Health will send the information to 911 and so forth. On the other hand, I hear you saying, well, you can, when you have an emergency, you call and then ask them to get the information that was submitted on the most.
So for the form with DC Health is going to be the receiver of that form. They're going to receive that information. I'm not familiar with their processes, but if they're saying that emergency responders will be aware of your submission of that form, they're referring to DC Fire and EMS. They're not specifically referring to our call center, which is the Office of Unified Communications. So we're kind of the conduit to emergency services. When you call 911, we either send DC Fire and EMS to you, depending on if you're having a medical emergency or there's a fire, or we send MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department. So we're kind of that middle part. We're going to send out those emergency services. But whatever you submit via that form will bypass our call center and go directly to the fire department, and they're going to have that information. So it won't come to our call center. We won't have access to that information, but DC Fire and EMS will, because they're going to be the ones that are going to respond to that emergency. Does that make sense?
Sounds like a missing link.
Well, it sounds like, well, that we may need to table that question for Department of Health. And I think we have a seminar coming up with them, I believe in August. So I think that's where we will get a better response.
Okay.
Hi, this is Lillian. I read your the smart 911 facts, and I just want to follow up there. I just want to be clear. So it said in the write-up that you have to do an update every 6 months, or the account might become disabled. Is that right? You need to do something, log in, or do something.
Yes. So they will send you an email every 6 months and say, hey, is all this information still active? Is it still up to date? You just click yes, and it continues to live in the system.
Okay. So if you don't do it, you might lose your account.
Yes, potentially.
right?
But what happens is what we're doing before is when we were going out to different communities, they were requiring an email address for that kind of communication. But unfortunately, a lot of our seniors and a lot of people don't have email addresses, so they had to take that down. So when you go in, there is an option to add an email address for someone that's assisting you with your profile, which is what we were doing when we were going out to communities. And I was having my information be added or one of my colleagues' information. And we would just, when we got the prompts, call the person and say, hey, we just received information from Smart 911. Is this profile still up to date? If so, yes. And then if not, we move forward so that there's no kind of gap in that. But yes, I believe that they hold the information, and I don't want to misspeak, but they do keep it within their system for a certain amount of time past that. But every 6 months, they do prompt you to update that information just in case people have moved, information changes, and things like that.
And a second question, does the information only come up if you're using a registered phone number? So if you're using a friend's cell phone to call, that's not part of your Smart 911, then you're
Correct.
in trouble. It's going to come up.
Correct.
Is that right?
It only will come from the phone number that is linked to the account. So if you create your account and you link your cell phone number, if you call from that cell phone number, that profile will come up. But if you call from someone else's phone number that's not linked to your account, the profile won't activate. Yes, that's correct.
Can you have more than one phone number linked to an account?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Okay.
all.
We have another person that with their hand up, Sheila Clark.
Yes, I have a question. This is emergency preparedness relative to the 311 and 911 services.
Mm-hmm.
The other emergency preparedness would be relative to your in-home, say there was some type of evacuation or something that happened where you'd have to do a go bag and all these kind of preparations. Where would that emergency service emergency preparedness training come from? Is that Homeland Security?
Yes, ma'am. DC Homeland Security.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to know, in the event there was some type of catastrophic situation where we would have to evacuate or whatever, are you prepared, is 311 prepared for all these calls coming in the call center, trying to figure out where to go and how to get and all of that?
Yes. So 311 operates as kind of still that mayor citywide call center line. So we take directive from DC Homeland Security, who is responsible for all things emergency preparedness, disaster response, and things of that nature. So in the event that something like that occurs, they will what we call activate within the city, and they will get all the necessary people in the room. They will communicate to 311. This is the messaging. This is what we're telling people to do. We do that even now when the district activates, for instance, a heat emergency. We get information down to 311. These are the different cooling centers. This is the hypothermia line if it's in the winter and we're having issues with that. So we get information from Homeland Security and we know what to communicate down. We also have a surge capacity with 311 call takers. 311 is fully staffed at almost, I think, near 100 customer service representatives. They take over 1.8 million calls a year. They are very prepared to take any volume of calls. They're very familiar with spikes in calls, and they're very kind of, I guess, sensitive to and understand how fast moving and fast paced emergencies and things like that can be in the city. They're used to it. They've been doing it for a very long time. And so we kind of follow under HCMA if a thing like that occurs, like a natural disaster and there's a disaster response. We also have people like MOKers, the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, that go out into the community to kind of mend that gap. So if people are calling, we handle it, and then there's people that are kind of on the grounds that are handling that as well. I hope that answers your question.
So I actually, Ms. Clark, I'd like you to bring your questions to the session next month when we'll be meeting with DC Homeland Security. So if you want to have more questions regarding what you do in your home or anything associated with that, we can be able to have one of their representatives respond.
Okay, great. You're sending an email about that?
Yes, yes, your village should be sending the information out for the next section. Because the same time next month.
All right, great. Another thing, last thing I want.
Wait, I really is only one question per person, but go ahead.
I just want to know that the app would be best to get the real-time, quick information. Is that correct? For emergencies, if you had the app?
Which app are you referring to? I'm sorry. The 311 app?
Yes.
No, so the 311 app doesn't send out emergency alerts. Alert DC sends out emergency alerts, which is under DC Homeland Security. So they're going to be the ones that are going to send out those alerts. If you have any kind of things going on in your neighborhood, you can go through and subscribe to the alerts that you'd like to receive.
All right,
and
thank you.
They'll tailor it to your preferences. You're welcome.
Okay, I think we have someone else with their hand up. Let me see. If you have your hand up, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. Are there any more questions? I guess not. Well, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Danielle, for giving such a great presentation. This actual session that we're doing, the second Tuesday of June, July, and August regarding emergency preparedness is being brought to you by DC Collaborative, DC Villages. And my name is Dr. Katrina Polk. So I hope this was informative. And we will have next month on the second Tuesday, same time, DC Homeland Security, and they'll be talking about the DC age readiness plans. So if that's it, and we have no questions, Danielle, do you have any last words?
No, I don't have any last words. I put my my information in the chat, my email. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. If you would like us to come to your centers and do any kind of outreach, come and do a Smart 911 registration, we are open to any and all of it. And please use that feedback form if you have any other questions about anything in general, and we'll make sure that it gets to the right people.
Okay, then thank you. It has been a pleasure. And make sure you guys sign up for that Smart 911. It has been effective.
Yes.
See you next on the second Tuesday of July.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.